Welcome to the Bookworm Duo, where we explore a variety of books. Today we're going deep into Kara Swisher's Burn book, a tech love story. You've sent over some really interesting excerpts, and we're going to take you on a journey through the book, hitting those key moments as they happened.
Think of us as your speed reading buddies. We're going to give you the VIP tour of Kara's wild ride through the tech world.
Okay, let's unpack this. Kara's story starts with a pretty intense event. Her dad suddenly passed away from a brain aneurysm when he was only 34.
It's almost like this event became the foundation for how she sees the world. The book really emphasizes this feeling that life is fragile, and you've got to grab every opportunity.
You could definitely sense that drive in her, even from her early days. I mean, as a freshman at Georgetown, she snagged a major journalism award. That's not something everyone does.
It's wild, right? And she didn't just stop there. She actually started fact-checking for the Washington Post and ended up getting hired as a stringer. Talk about taking initiative.
She was clearly a go-getter from the start. There's this other detail that I found really fascinating. Kara was super into studying propaganda, especially how the Nazis used it. It almost foreshadows her later views about the power of tech.
Yeah, you see, even back then, Kara was attuned to how information could be weaponized. It's almost like she had the sixth sense about where the digital world was heading.
Now, fast forward to the dawn of the internet. We've all heard that Al Gore invented the internet joke, but Kara actually dives into what really went down.
She talks about the Gore bill, which actually pumped a ton of money into key internet projects. So even though Gore didn't invent the internet, he played a pretty big role in its early development. It's a more nuanced story than people realize.
Kara was an early believer in the web's potential. I love that she compares it to a neatly planned neighborhood in the massive wilderness of the internet.
Yeah, it shows she understood how the web could bring order to the chaos of information. And her decision to join the Wall Street Journal to cover tech back when it was seen as this boring beat, that was seriously ahead of the curve.
She could see what others were missing. All right, let's move on to the wild world of AOL, Netscape, and the dot-com bubble. This is where things get really excited.
It's like the Wild West of the internet.
Exactly. Kara talks about her first encounter with Steve Case, the founder of AOL. He made this bold prediction about AOL's future, and even compared Time Warner to Babylon, powerful but destined to crumble.
What's interesting is that Kara was already seeing the potential for disruption, even within these powerful companies. She calls the early AOL team the bad news bears of tech, which gives you a sense of that scrappy energy of that time.
It wasn't all sleep and polish like Silicon Valley today. And you've got to hear this. There's this hilarious story about a reporter who compared the internet to CB radio. Talk about underestimating a revolution.
It's mind-blowing how many people just didn't get it. Kara, on the other hand, was all in, even moving to Silicon Valley in 1996.
She was fully committed to covering this world. Then there's Netscape bursting onto the scene, and Mark Andreessen's famous line, "Software is eating the world." It perfectly sums up how tech was about to gobble up everything.
And amidst all this crazy growth and potential, Kara was turning down crazy job offers from the very company she was covering. She valued her journalistic independence over a quick buck.
It shows you how committed she was to unbiased reporting, even when everyone around her was getting rich. Okay, next up, we've got the rise of Google, Yahoo, Amazon, and of course the dot-com crash.
Fasten your seatbelts. This is where the landscape of the internet really starts to take shape.
Kara had incredible access to the Google founders. There's even this funny anecdote about Larry Page telling her, don't tell them about how fast Google was growing. She really had the inside scoop.
It's amazing how she got those kind of insights. And then you've got Jeff Bezos, who is completely different from the flashier dot-com guys. He was all about the long game, focused on logistics and making the customer happy.
He was building an empire brick by brick, while others were busy throwing lavish parties. But then, as we all know, the bubble burst, boo.com, pets.com, companies were dropping like flies.
It was a bloodbath. And Kara had actually predicted it. She understood that power is always in flux, and what goes up must come down.
She was seeing the warning sign that others missed. But there were some survivors, right?
Absolutely. Companies like Blue Mountain Arts, the folks behind those e-cards everyone was sending, they focused on fundamentals and made it through. It shows that even in a crash, those with a solid foundation can weather the storm.
So after the dust settled, who emerged as the new power players?
Well, that's where the next chapter of Kara's story takes us. The rise of social media was about to change everything again.
I'm ready for more. Let's dive into that in part 2.
All right, we're back and ready to dive into the era of social media. This is where things get really interesting, and you can see Kara's perspective on tech starting to shift.
You mentioned a shift. What did you mean by that?
Well, in the early days, there was this sense of optimism, a feeling that the internet could truly change the world for the better. But as social media platforms like Facebook and Twitter gained power, Kara began to see the darker side of this connected world.
Yeah, I could see how that would happen. It's easy to get caught up in the excitement of new technology, but it's important to also consider the potential downsides.
Exactly. And Kara was one of the first to really start sounding the alarm about things like privacy, misinformation, and the power these platforms were accumulating.
So let's talk about Facebook. Kara actually knew Mark Zuckerberg from his early days, even before Facebook became a thing. She paints a pretty interesting picture of him.
Yeah, she describes him as this awkward, almost robotic figure, but with this intense ambition burning underneath. She could see that he was going to be a major player, even if he wasn't the most charismatic guy in the room.
That's interesting how she was able to see past that initial awkwardness and recognize his potential. And what about Twitter? I know she was an early adopter and had a lot to say about its evolution.
Oh, absolutely. Kara was on Twitter from the very beginning, and she had a front row seat to its rise and all the drama that came with it. She saw the good, the way it could connect people and give a voice to the voiceless, but she also saw the potential for abuse and manipulation.
And wasn't afraid to call it out, was she? I mean, even back then, she was raising concerns about things like harassment, misinformation, and the spread of hate speech.
She was way ahead of the curve on that. She talks about specific controversies, like the whole Alex Jones situation on Facebook and the platform's struggles with Holocaust deniers. These were issues that weren't getting much attention back then, but Kara was already sounding the alarm.
It's almost like she could see where things were headed. And then, of course, there's the whole Elon Musk saga with Twitter. That's a whole other level of crazy.
Yeah, that's a wild chapter. Kara goes into detail about Musk's chaotic leadership, his attacks on the media, and his cozying up to right-wing figures. She really pulls no punches in her assessment of him.
So we've got this rise of social media, and it's clearly a mixed bag. On the one hand, you've got this incredible potential for connection and communication, but on the other hand, you've got all these new challenges and threats. How does this play out in the broader media landscape? I know Kara has a lot to say about the tech industry's influence on Hollywood and traditional media.
Oh, absolutely. She witnessed firsthand how the rise of Netflix, YouTube, and streaming completely upended the traditional media power structure.
And Hollywood didn't see it coming, did they?
Many of them didn't. Kara tells this great story about a panel at Sundance where she basically confronted all these Hollywood bigwigs about the disruption that was heading their way.
I can imagine that didn't go over well.
Not really, but she was right, wasn't she? Companies like Disney and News Corp, they were slow to adapt, and they paid the price. Kara has been warning about the growing control tech companies have over media distribution and content creation for years.
It's something we all need to be paying attention to, but it's not just about the media landscape that's changing. Kara also dives into the experiences of women in tech and the ongoing fight for equality.
This is another area where she's been a powerful voice. She talks about Ellen Pow's experiences at Kleiner Perkins and Reddit, and how she was met with intense backlash for speaking out against gender discrimination and online harassment.
It's a reminder that even in this supposedly progressive industry, there are still major systemic issues that need to be addressed.
Absolutely. And she doesn't shy away from discussing the complexities of being a woman in a position of power. She talks about her friendship with Sheryl Sandberg and the challenges Sandberg faced as COO of Facebook.
So it's not a simple story of good guys and bad guys. There are a lot of nuances and gray areas.
Right. But Kara is clear that the lack of diversity in tech's leadership ranks is a major problem. And she's been a consistent advocate for greater inclusion and representation.
So we've covered a lot of ground here. We've seen how the internet evolved from those early optimistic days to the rise of social media giants and the challenges they've created. And we've touched on the impact of tech on the media landscape and the ongoing struggle for equality within the industry. But I know Kara's story also gets very personal in Burn Book.
You're right. Up next, we'll explore how all of this affected Kara on a personal level and what lessons she learned along the way.
Let's do it. We'll be back with a final part of our deep dive after a quick break. We've been talking about the evolution of the tech industry and all the ups and downs that came with it. But I'm curious to hear more about how all of this impacted Kara personally. She's been at the heart of this world for so long, it must have taken a toll.
You're absolutely right. In Burn Book, Kara gets really candid about the personal price she paid for being on the front lines of the tech revolution. One of the most powerful moments in the book is when she talks about having a stroke in 2013.
I remember hearing about that. It must have been a wake-up call.
It was a major turning point for Naz. She talks about how it forced her to reevaluate her priorities and make some changes in her life. It made her realize that even someone as driven and ambitious as her needs to slow down and take care of themselves.
It's a good reminder for all of us, really. It's easy to get caught up in the hustle and forget to prioritize our well-being.
Exactly. And she doesn't just talk about her own experiences. She also shares some really heartbreaking stories about other people in the tech world who struggled with burnout and the intense pressure to succeed.
Like Tony Hsieh, the founder of Zappos, right? His story is incredibly tragic.
It is. She also talks about the sudden death of Dave Goldberg, Sheryl Sandberg's husband. These stories really drive home the human cost of this relentless drive for innovation and disruption.
It makes you wonder if there's a better way, a more sustainable way to build and grow these companies without sacrificing everything.
That's a question a lot of people are asking these days, and I think Kara's book is an important contribution to that conversation. But even after everything she's seen and experienced, she doesn't come across as completely disillusioned.
That's good to hear. It's easy to get cynical about the tech industry, especially given all the negative headlines these days.
You're right, but Kara still believes in the power of technology to do good. She's just more aware of the potential downsides and the importance of being thoughtful and responsible about how we develop and use it.
So what does she see as the biggest challenges moving forward?
She's especially concerned about the future of AI and the incredible power it's putting in the hands of a few companies like OpenAI. She has these fascinating conversations with Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, where they grapple with the ethical implications of increasingly powerful AI systems.
It's mind-blowing to think about where AI is headed and what it could mean for society.
It really is. And Kara doesn't pretend to have all the answers, but she's asking the right questions. She's pushing us to think about how we can ensure that AI is used for the benefit of humanity, not just for profit or power.
I'm sensing a theme here. Throughout the book, she seems to be calling for a more ethical and responsible approach to technology. Would you say that's accurate?
Absolutely. She's not anti-technology, but she's become increasingly critical of the way it's been developed and deployed. She argues that we need to move beyond the blind pursuit of growth and innovation and start thinking more about the impact these technologies are having on our lives, our communities, and our planet.
She's basically calling for a course correction, isn't she?
I think that's a great way to put it. She's saying that we still have time to get things right, but we need to act now. We need to demand more from our leaders, from the tech companies, and from ourselves.
So what can we do? As individuals, how can we make a difference?
She talks about the importance of being informed citizens of the digital age. We need to understand how these technologies work, how they're being used, and what the potential consequences are.
We can't just blindly accept whatever new gadget or app comes along.
Right. We need to be critical thinkers and ask tough questions. We also need to be conscious consumers and support companies that align with our values. And we need to hold our elected officials accountable for creating regulations that protect our interests.
It sounds like she's calling for a collective effort, a movement of sorts.
I think you're right. She's saying that the future of technology isn't something that's going to be decided for us. It's something we all have a role in shaping.
Wow, that's pretty inspiring. So after taking this deep dive into Bird Book, what's your biggest takeaway?
For me, it's a reminder that technology is a powerful tool, but it's just that. A tool, it can be used for good or for evil. It's up to us to decide which path we want to take.
Well said. I think Kara's story is a powerful reminder that we all have a responsibility to engage with these issues and to fight for a better tech future. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Burn Book. I hope you found it as insightful and thought-provoking as I did.
It was my pleasure. I always enjoy these conversations.
Thanks for joining us. Subscribe for more bookish adventures and hit that like button if you enjoy the ride. Don't forget to share the knowledge, spread the word.